Today we're visiting the UK's most inland natural port, a place which has links to Henry VIII, it has links to World War II, it's been on film as part of World War II, and it's got so many little interesting things. Most importantly of all, it's where I'm from. So, welcome to Goole. Right, so we've come to the beginning of the main street in Goole. I'm going to walk down there, look at a few of the interesting facts as we go. Some of them have personal significance to myself, some of them don't. But the first thing we're going to come across is behind these steel bars here. And this is Goole Main School. Now, I worded it like that specifically because it's had several names, and I'm going to go through them with you now. Originally, this was a grammar school, so you had to pass a certain test at the age of 11 to get into it, or you had money behind you. It was called Goole Grammar School, and if we look over the nets here, you can see on the top of it, it still says Goole Grammar School. If you look here, it says Delta Goole. So how did this place become Delta? Well, in essence, the grammar school became a school for everybody, but they kept the name. So when I went to school, I went to Goole Grammar School, even though it wasn't a proper grammar school at the time. Then it became Bermudum because I thought that was too confusing. And then it became Delta. Why? I've no idea. But as you can see, it is a proper size school and it goes an awful long way back. But if you look at the other side of the street, there's another building. That was called the Modern School. So why was it called the Modern School? It was a modern school because it was for people who couldn't pass the 11 plus. In other words, those that were clever went to one side of the street, and those that, due to one test, wasn't, went there. Obviously things have changed since then, and this is called the Hub now, or it will be. Where we are now is actually in Morrison's car park in Goole, and you'll notice that windmill there. Well, this used to be a bakery, all this area here, and what Morrison's have done is kept the main building of the windmill built into the cafe itself, which is a fun way of doing things. I quite like it, something different. If you're from Yorkshire, you'll be aware of Wilko, and this is Wilko Motorsave, which is a derivative of it. Originally, this plot of land had a petrol forecourt on the front. It was Cornelia Parish who sold Wolseley and Austin cars. The front of it was at an angle. Then it became Auto Super Safe, which I worked at. And in actual fact, behind those barriers up there was a flat at the top. I don't know if it's still there, because that's obviously raised, but it was a hidden flat, which you could, there's a little entrance down there between the shop front and the garage entrance. And we used to end up storing stuff up there, but part of it, you go up and you can see a chimney up there. It was literally a one-bedroom flat, so what's happened to that, I don't know. Anybody knows, let me know. The Yorkshire Bed Shop was where the petrol station was. And at this side, where you see Smith's Kitchens and Quick Fit and whatnot, this was Rainbow Motor Company, who used to sell Fords. And I worked here for a bit. But that's been totally demolished and taken away now. things changed with regard to shops, but you see here, go past all these are all fairly new, I don't recognise any of them, but the shop at the end, the Beauty and Laser Clinic, that used to be the main post office in Goole. Actually, let me think about it. That's where the cinema used to be, because it used to be exactly opposite. And the reason I know that, my grandpa used to run this. He would sit me on the counter and let me stamp the books as people came in to get pensions and whatnot. Across the road, where that white door is, used to be Chaplow's, which was a newsagent's. You can see there's something a bit older behind it. Ramsbottom Brothers Wholesale Groceries. I don't even remember that. But what I do remember, up here, those windows up there, was a proper 1950s, 60s style Barber's. I remember going up there because my grandpa obviously knew him, being in the post office just next door, and him doing my hair in there. It was slightly sloped, but you would honestly think you'd gone into the film Grease or something like that. The decor was just so much like it. Where Big Bites is now, and Revive, used to be one big, mini supermarket called Jackson's. I remember it well. They used to sell a biscuit there that I'm sure was banned from the food colouring, but I used to love it, round ones, and they were bright orange, bright green, and there was something Monster, something like that. Can't remember what they are, so if you do, please let me know. I've wondered about that for a long, long time. Across there, you'll see Tesco's. Now Tesco's is built on the site of Goole Hospital, but originally this hospital here, that was stood here, was in fact the workhouse for Goole. Now, when Margaret Thatcher came to power in the late 70s, early 80s, she did one thing that was really, really a fantastic idea. She shut every hospital that had been a workhouse. So why was that the case? Because many people had gone straight from the workhouse, become old, into the hospital, and it was like they'd lived their whole life in the same rooms. I remember visiting it as a hospital, where they were made the people who were classed as inmates still, even though they were part of the hospital, to make stools for people and things like that. So you'd have the centre of town, all the shops going on, and you'd spent your life in the workhouse from late Victorian times onwards. Now, bearing in mind, this would be the late 70s, early 80s, the people who were in there had been there for a long time. They'd become institutionalised. But Margaret Thatcher decided to get rid of that. One of the best moves she's ever done.
As we walk along the streets, there are so many shops that were definitely not there 20, 30 years ago, as you'd expect. One thing that Goole is famous for now is the fact it's got such a large Polish population in the town, and the international or mainly Polish food shops. There's more than 3 or 4 now in such a small place.
Now, because Goole was a major port, we had a lot of travellers, and this building here, which looks old because it is, and the one just at the other side of the station, which I'll come to in a minute, were the main 2 places for people to visit, to stay. Along with Bootery Road, which used to go all the way through to the clock tower, which we'll walk up to in a minute. It doesn't now. You have Pasture Road, which we'll walk down later. There tends to be a lot of takeaways down there now. And to get to the other side of Goole, the main part of Goole, you'd go through the subway, which we're going to go now. And this is the second place that I mentioned that would be the main stop, and to be honest, the main two pubs in Goole. So as we go along here, there's been, as you would expect in any shopping area, a massive change since I was a kid. But let me go through some of the big ones. First of all, the hospice shop used to be Woolworths. It had a fire, and then it went under a few years later. Fire were brilliant for getting cheap stuff. Just here, Iceland, that was the smallest Marks and Spencer's in the country. Well, literally my uncle at the time was dealing with their account, and this was listed as the smallest one. Obviously they've shut it since then. Times Printing Company. Goole Times used to be based here. I remember going there to put adverts in. If we look at the end there, one of these, I've got a feeling it could be where Diva Nails is or Stone Cold Tattoos, but one of these 4 or 5 shops used to be Chapel's newsagents. Yes, second branch, they have 3 in Goole, and that's used to be one of them. However, some things don't change. Arthur Reed has been here since I can remember. They're well established. But one of the main things that you'll know about Goole is the clock tower. And the clock tower has been here since 1926. Originally, you could walk to it quite easily, it wasn't a roundabout, and there were toilets underneath it. They were gone by the 1950s, 60s. Over there, where it says City and County, was the Midland Bank, which became HSBC, and the pub there, the Old George. If I zoom in a bit, you'll see a bit better. The Old George is supposed to be haunted. My sister worked there, and in the basement area, there's a bar down there, mainly for events I think, or it was. Women used to get their bums spanked by the naughty ghost. Women didn't like to go down there. Over there we've got Goole Market Hall and the library. Now the library's got a museum in it that's well worth seeing. It shows you some of the artefacts that have been dug up from around here. Now you may remember I mentioned Henry VIII had claim to this place. Well, this area used to be old bogland, and you used to come hunting in what is now Goole. Not that you'd think it nowadays. That building there, by the way, is council offices, but it would have been, in past times, to do with shipping companies. The shipping companies had an awful lot in the construction of this place. Many of the places at this end of the town were from shipping money. But as you can see now, the centre of town, which used to have a big road going down the middle of it, is now all pedestrianised. And although the people of Goole said they didn't want it, the council did it, and the atmosphere has died in the place. Or at least in the centre of town, in my opinion. Yeah, there's still shops here and people are still going to come here, but it's lost that edge. The other thing is, if you look at these lampposts, they used to have old lampposts. They've gone for these modern ones that's supposed to resemble old lampposts, but the thing that some people won't know is they used to have the Christmas decorations up here every day of the year. They were turned off, but come Christmas they were already fitted. The council decided to sell them and rent Christmas decorations. Now Goole doesn't have a great history for Christmas decorations. In fact, they get noted for their Christmas tree that comes not being that great. You remember how I said that the centre of town has lost its edge? Well, right next to it now, because they've locked all that off, they've created a mini shopping area with your likes of Boots, Argos, you've got Boys, Peacocks. If you don't know what Boys and Peacocks are, the Peacocks are similar to Primark, maybe a touch more expensive, maybe a touch less at times, cheap clothing shop. Boys is sort of everything else cheap. But all this is right next to the station that we've just come from. You've also got a B&M's, an Asda, which I'm just going to walk and show you very briefly, just show that they are actually there. As I say, we've got Greggs. Let's face it, if you're in the UK and you don't have a Greggs, you're not worthy to be called a town. Simple as that. Everybody looks at Greggs. But Argos is your catalogue shop. Stuff that I would say probably the stuff that Amazon would sell as their stuff is similar in nature. Your TVs, your washing machines, things like that, sweets, things like that. New Look, which is a women's clothing shop. And as I say, you've got Asda and B&M. In your distance you'll see two buildings, one white, one brown, behind all the actual buildings and shops. That is known in Goole as the Salt and Pepper Pot. One's a water tower, and I think the other one works alongside that, filtering and making sure it's clean. I'm not 100% certain. Goole is separated into two distinct areas. We've now come to what's called Old Goole, which, by the name as it sounds, is the older part of Goole. Across that river there is where we've just been to Goole itself, and they're like two different environments, totally different. Old Goole is more like a small village, whereas Goole is the sort of the industrial side of it, etc. But we're going to drive around and I'll show you one or two things in it, including one thing that makes, well, it's got a personal aspect to myself, which you'll see in a minute. Right, we're now at what is now part of the port side, where stock comes into the country.
Don't these kids remind you of what it was like to be a kid? I remember playing about like this.
Let's have a look.
It will be on YouTube.
This area here used to be part of the shipyard. All this area round here, and you'd have hundreds, if not thousands of people finishing work on a Friday, getting on their bikes and cycling all the way back into town. The docks would be absolutely full of people on bicycles, and literally the whole of Goole would come to an end while they came home. But now this has become more a storage area for Goole Port itself. So
many of the houses in Old Goole were council built or terraced houses, or some are owned now, but at the time it was a place where the locals who were working at the shipyard or in the docks had somewhere comfortable and nearby to actually live in. As I say, majority of the houses nowadays, there's very, very few council houses and rentables. These are mostly being purchased over the past 30-40 years. But there was a time where you'd drive along these streets and there would be identical houses with little bars for the actual fences, like on that one there. But now it's more of part of Goole, but still with that village feel, a very comfortable, relaxed place to be, without all the amenities that Goole has. Only separated by a bridge, or two, or rather three. As soon as we cross this river, we've left Old Goole and gone into Goole. Although it's the same town, the river makes a difference.
now what we're looking at now is called the Dutch River. A gentleman called the Muden was chartered to drain all the marshlands from here, and he made a mess of it. He was paid equivalent to billions nowadays, made a mess of it, and lost every penny he had having to make it all right again. Old Goole is that side of the bridge, and Goole is this side of the bridge. Although officially it's the same place, is it though? Two different people, two different styles of people. Nothing wrong with either, just different. Next to the Bermuda, you'll notice that there's a turning and some silos and some warehouses. Well,
between the silos and the bridge is a turning.
Was a post office. I know that because my grandpa owned it, the one who then went on and ran the one in the middle of Goole itself. My mum was born there, and in those days, anybody could play on the docks. In fact, one of the things that she does remember about living there is the fact that she had a pair of stilts, and when they moved, they never came back. All this was Victorian built Goole. And if you look at it now, there's the gasworks office. Obviously it's not now, but that's where the gas would be controlled for the whole of Goole, because this was Goole. You've got the docks yard there, you've got the actual docks themselves over here. Now, there's a few unique things. There's a few unique things that are worth looking at. That green thing there is what was used to bring coal off the ships into the port and to put other items on, or be coal going out. You remember I mentioned something called tom puddings? They were invented here. Tom puddings are literally little barge compartments that could then transport coal from this area of the UK to other parts through the canal network. You've got to remember that at that stage, canals were the main way to transport stuff. One of the oldest churches in Goole is this particular one, St John's, which would have been built at the early time of Goole itself. And for a small place like this, it has one large tower. It's not a cathedral, but you can imagine people off the boats coming here to worship, because this area is all historic Goole. And you can see there one of the ships, obviously unloading or something at the moment, that is literally a few feet away from the actual church itself. As I say, everything was built around the docks. Now we're coming to one of the most important streets for old-time Goole, as this would have been where most of the people coming off the ships would have visited. The Capricorn restaurant over there has been going for years, but what I'm actually referring to is just a little bit further up here, and that's the pubs. Most of these pubs have histories that would scare most people because they've been here for so long. And I remember walking down this street, and because the ships are literally unloaded there, which I don't know if you can see properly out there, is one of the ships being unloaded there as we speak. Because the ships are there, you would have railway lines on the road going from here right up to where we were before. So, what are these pubs? First one's Macintosh Arms. I remember going there at just about legal age. And then the Royal Hotel. But the big one, which has got a big wooden thing outside its door, was the Lowther Hotel. I'll check and let you know whether it's still in operation, but this was the oldest running hotel of its type in the country not so long back, so I'm hoping it hasn't shut. Let's go have a look. When I say about these pubs being classic, sort of been here forever, they have. They were from the time where the docks were extremely busy with sailors. Not necessarily the amount of stuff that's going on, but you can see how close they are to the docks. You just jump off your ship, come and have a drink. Right, there we go. The Lowther Hotel. The first building to be built in the port of Goole by Sir Edward Banks in 1824, and the oldest hotel in the country. So, it says post for the Lowther at the side. I am really hoping this hasn't closed, being the very first hotel in Goole, first place in Goole, but we'll see. And what I was saying about the stuff coming off the ships, it would come off on rails, which has obviously been tarmacked over the years, and then straight over this bridge into the port itself. Now, we are allowed to walk over part of the bridge, so we're going to do that now, but we're going to be sneaking, put the camera around the other side so you can see that as well, because as you can see, lovely big area here that they have, but we're not allowed down there, so we won't go down there. But we are allowed at this side, where there's actually more happening. And you can see the old sheds that were there, associated British ports. Now you've got a ship literally a couple of 100 yards from the centre of town. Fantastic place this is. So much going on in one place. And most of this based on a Victorian idea of what a town should be. But there's not many ports you can actually walk into. Yes, you're bad from actually getting into the water area, but isn't this good to be able to see what's going on? You can do this when they're busy. Not restricted. I'm not going to go all the way into it because you see much the same. But this is where big ships come, all the stock gets taken off to this fantastic place called Goole. It's well worth a visit. It's not a place that you'd necessarily make a holiday destination of. Whether it be Goole or Old Goole, they're both unique. And you can see the Lowther Hotel there, why it was the first building made for the docks. Perfect place, you're on the docks, you want to stay for the night, you're the captain of the ship, where else would you want to stay? And yet you go down that street, you're right in the centre of Goole itself.
Right, I'm going to take you for a little drive round Goole now, just to show you some things a little bit quicker. That field there, and all that area there, is the back of what was called a grammar school. And there are buildings and buildings, it is huge. This is Centenary Road that we're driving down now, and this is the back of the grammar school as was, but it's actually the main entrance now. So you'd come in through there. We're now heading up to Pasture Road. Pasture Road, if you remember, is just off the main road, Boo Ferry Road. And the thing that you'll notice about it, I mean, yes, there's another church there. There's quite a few churches in Goole. But as you drive along, in Goole, you tend to find you have the smaller shops down Pasture Road and the big shops down Boo Ferry Road. So you've got your takeaways, you've got places like the Polish food shops, things like that. There's quite a few down here that have changed hands, and quite a few that have been there for a long time now. Example, that little shop there on the left that we just passed, been selling pushchairs and prams since before I was born, I believe. Just going past at the right, the station hotel as was. Why they changed it to what it was, I can understand maybe financially, but it was such a fantastic looking building. Now to the left is Goole train station, and we're now going to go drive past it. We'll stop just outside it. And then this shopping area that was built in the last 15-20 years, maybe a bit longer. You've got B&M, you've got Asda, you've got Argos. That's sort of the main shops that you'd expect in any medium-sized town. If you're not from the UK, you'll see these houses and you think they're very small, but in actual fact, the majority of the houses in industrially based towns like Goole was tended to be terrace, quick to build, enough space to live in, perfect for people working on the docks, the shipyard, but even now, they're more than sizable enough for a comfortable family home. As we're going back now into the centre of town, you'll notice there's a Farm Foods, there's a Sports Direct, Home Bargains. There's plenty of shops at this end of the town, but we're driving now back up to the Clock Tower area. You're back in the centre of town again. And now we're driving past the Salt and Pepper Pot. And you're almost immediately back in the docks. We're going to go over this bridge and then we're going to head towards leaving Goole. We'll just see how close everything is. I think I best speed this up a bit because it's quite a long distance out. Just there is where my dad first learned to work. He built rowing boats that ended up at near Hull in Doncaster, I believe it was, or ends. And that had been back in the 1960s, so that place has been there a while. Well, the building anyway.
I hope you've enjoyed our little trip to Goole. One thing I didn't mention is Goole was where part of the landing platforms were built for when the UK and its collaborators, USA, Canada, Australia, all of us went back into France at the end of World War II. We needed somewhere for the troops to offload to get the heavy bombardment through. And this is one of the places where it was built. So Goole's got fantastic history behind it. We've now got Tesco's, we've got Croda, we've got, let's see, how many supermarkets? Aldi, Lidl, Tesco's, Morrison's, Farm Foods, and Asda. And those are 6 in a small place. So it's got everything here that you could want. Sports Direct, Argos, B&M stores, there's everything here, but it's in a small community, so it feels like you're at home all the time. For me, definitely. Well, I hope you've enjoyed my little trip home, and hit that subscribe button, helps me tremendously, costs you nothing, and hit the next video, and we'll see you on there. Bye for now.